This will shock you. Every year in Australia, around 1.5 million school students are bored, struggling, disengaged. Plus, thousands of our teenagers do not master basic literacy and numeracy skills. Many are underachieving, not meeting their true potential. Stress is a big problem for teachers and students and parents. There's an abundance of poor mental health and obesity. There's a lack of positive parental involvement. Many children don't get off to a good start before they even begin school. And teaching and learning for the 21st century is tricky. But it doesn't have to be this way. Overcoming these problems in education is not rocket science, but it does require brain science. How? Let me ask you a question. Would you agree, since the brain is central to the learning process, that students, parents and teachers, those of us who are in the business of learning, would benefit from knowing how the brain learns best? It's a no-brainer, right? The thing is, most students, parents and teachers know very little about the organ we work with most. As author Leslie A. Hart says, teaching without an awareness of how the brain learns is like designing a glove with no sense of what a hand looks like. It just doesn't make sense. I became a teacher because I want to help young people believe in themselves and realise and reach their incredible true potential, regardless of their circumstances. As a mind-brain education specialist and presenter, I do just that. I help young people and their parents and teachers become their best selves by understanding how their mind and brain works, learns and grows best using a brain-based, holistic approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning. Now, you may think education is not a field that interests or affects you, but I promise that it is. We all have a vested interest in making education as best as it can be. Helping young people realise and reach their true potential affects all of us. Why? Because education is about developing the best next generation we can. The students today will be the adults tomorrow, providing us with healthcare, social policies and all our goods and services. The adults tomorrow making the laws we have to follow, the environmental practices and commercial decisions that affect the planet that we and our loved ones will live on. Do you want to live in a planet full of kind, compassionate, intelligent, responsible, happy, healthy, creative problem solvers? We all do, and that's why revolutionising education matters to all of us. The story begins in my small country classroom, where I had taught with my brain-based approach for 6 years. I taught my little primary students everything I learnt about their learning brain as I learnt it. The results were immediate and incredible. As a teacher, knowing what to say and do to help boost their brain's engagement, attention, memory, and enjoyment of my lessons took so much stress and guesswork out of my job. I knew how to induce the exact brain chemicals needed to radically enhance learning and memory in the right order. I knew the processes that needed to occur, and I knew how to help activate and deactivate regions of their brain so my students felt happy and could learn better. As for students, knowing what was going on inside their own brain empowered them to take control and care of their own learning and happiness. They became more confident, self-directed, had more self-belief, and their academic results skyrocketed. I loved teaching and my students loved learning. One day, the head principal from Perth came down to visit our country campus. He opened the classroom door and my students and I were all dancing and singing, playing musical statues to our times table songs. He said, "What's going on here?" And this little year 3 student pressed pause on the CD player, looked up at the principal, and I promise you this is what he said. "Well, we'd been working on our maths for quite a long time and we were finding it hard to stay focused, probably because we were running low on neurotransmitters. So we got up and put on the music. Now we're all laughing and dancing and puffed. So our brains are full of oxygen and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and endorphins. So now when we go back to our desk, we'll be able to focus on our work." The principal's mouth dropped open and he said, "How old are you?" And this little boy smiled and said, "I'm 7. As Dr. John Pelly, Professor of Medical Education, says, students who understand how their brain works always perform better than those who don't. My field is known as mind-brain education or educational neuroscience, and it just makes sense. It combines teaching and learning in the classroom with psychology, our mental thoughts, our mind, and the physical brain science or neuroscience of what's happening in our brain when we learn. For too long, education has been focused on the curriculum, what we teach students and what assessments and tests we give them. But not enough focus has been on who we are teaching, the young people in our classrooms as human beings with a mind and a brain with an almost unlimited, astonishing potential. Or how we are teaching, how we as educators, teachers and parents can create optimal learning experiences that are actually based on how the brain learns best. We as teachers are expected to teach students in a way that equips them for the 21st century. But many of us are equipped with ideas and misconceptions about learning that are more than 100 years old. The last 3 decades of neuroscience and psychology have illuminated the science of how the brain learns. But it can take multiple generations before new scientific understandings become mainstream and part of our everyday lives. I want to speed up that process. And as the OECD's Centre for Educational Research and Innovation recommends, we need to take a holistic brain-based approach to education. Because simple everyday matters like sleep, nutrition, movement, social interactions, and our environment are so often overlooked in their impact on education. But they should not be, because these everyday factors have a huge impact on the developing brain from a well-being and cognitive learning perspective. It is vital parents understand this. Studies in developing nations show that when parents learn brain-based strategies to use at home, they enhance their child's mental development, including grades, well-being, and even incomes later in life. Currently, too many students and parents and teachers unfortunately believe we are born with a certain level of fixed potential or intelligence that we're either stuck with or blessed with for life. But that's utter nonsense. Once we are empowered with the knowledge of our brain's astonishing power and potential, regardless of the brain we think we were born with, and how we can take control and care of our brain to achieve anything we put our mind to with our choices, thoughts, and actions, all of a sudden, students believe in themselves. Their mindset and behaviour changes. Magic happens. As one young primary student said to me, "If I didn't know I could grow my brain, I would think I was born dumb, so I will stay dumb." And another said that one of his favourite things was learning that he can grow his brain and make it stronger. Students as young as 7 in my class could articulate what was happening inside their own brain. For example, when I said to students, "Why do we practice our maths facts and spelling words over and over?" instead of complaining, they would say, "Because when we repeat stuff, the electricity pathway in our brain gets faster, and that's how memories are made." When one student would exclaim, "Oh, I can't do this, it's too hard," invariably at least one other student would pipe up and say, "You can't do it yet, you're in the learning pit." Or, "Your neurons are popping out branches. This is what learning feels like." I remember when one student was angry at some of his peers, I said to him, "What happens when we get angry?" And this little year 4 boy said, "My angry amygdala goes into superdrive." I said, "It does. And what happens when our angry amygdala goes into superdrive?" And he said, "It padlocks out my prefrontal cortex, so I'm not going to learn or remember anything you teach me." And I said, "That's right." And then I helped him to calm down and choose rational thoughts using a variety of mind-brain techniques. Now, these were all very normal, everyday conversations in our classroom. Then, in 2015, neuroscientist Dr. Sandra van Alderen from the Netherlands gave a TEDx talk in which she said, quote, It is not simple or straightforward to apply or translate brain science to education. I mean, if it was, it would have been done already. When I heard her say this, I literally jumped off the couch. With my background as a teacher, I had already done it. See, world-leading neuroscientists and psychologists actively promote the connection of brain science and psychology to education. But for neuroscientists and psychologists to practically make that connection in the classroom with real children and teenagers was always the tricky part. The success will come, I believe, when we as students, parents and teachers take the lead in applying and translating brain science and psychology to real-world education. After 6.5 years teaching in the country, I took a term off and went to the big city, Perth. I got a full-time 5-week contract teaching Year 7 students politics at a large public high school. It was very different from my small primary country class. This was the first time I had taught high school full-time, the first time I had taught classes of 35 students, and the first time I had taught in the city. The classes were full of teenagers, many of whom were apathetic, disinterested in learning, distracted, disorganised, and some just wanted to swear, walk out, or play computer games all lesson. I asked myself more than once on my first day, what have I done? But I decided to take on the challenge and use everything I knew about mind-brain education to teach politics to over 120 13-year-olds for 5 weeks. Now, unbeknownst to me, behind my classroom wall was the Deputy Principal's office. One day, he comes around the corner, all suited up, hands behind his back, and says, "I've come to see what's going on here. It sounds like everyone's having far too much fun." There was music playing through the classroom speakers. I was dressed as an historical figure. We'd just done a quiz. I was working with some students at their desk. Some were on the floor, some in the hallway, some around a picnic table under the tree outside. The students had choice and were using many different learning modes. So some were writing songs, some were drawing posters, and some were creating role plays. After a few minutes, he walks back past me and says, "Well, it seems to be working." At the end of the 5 weeks, a number of students from my different classes got me to follow them to our classroom. To my immense surprise, they had filled the entire room full of balloons and had covered the whiteboard in messages of thanks and appreciation. Amongst the feedback I received was this: "Thank you for teaching us in a way that makes you actually learn instead of just memorising stuff for a test, then forgetting it straight after just to repeat the cycle." This comment is both satisfying and sad, right? A 13-year-old has figured out that the point of education is to memorise stuff, regurgitate it for tests, forget it straight after, and repeat. This is obviously not the point of education. We want education to light the future generation up, to fan their flames of passion, to spark interests and drive them to be creative, critical thinkers who ask questions, solve problems, are equipped with the fundamental facts and skills to succeed in life, who stand up and speak up when it matters, who strive to be their best, most fulfilled selves, lifelong learners with a thirst for knowledge, truth and understanding, who are good, kind, compassionate people, who contribute something positively to the world around them, and who help to expand human knowledge. So, how do we do this? Let me give you 5 tips so when you are next interacting with a young member of the future of our planet, you can help them reach their true potential. Number 1, get well-being right first. If students are stressed, angry, anxious, tired, their brain cannot learn effectively. So use mindfulness, meditation, movement, breath work, music, nature, compassion, and gratitude to calm their brain. I'd like to ask you to close your eyes now and imagine you're in a beautiful rainforest and take 2 deep breaths. One more. Beautiful. Open your eyes. Number 2, engage with emotions. Invoke strong, positive emotions when you're helping a child or teenager learn. Think fun, laughter, curiosity, excitement, enthusiasm, and humour. Most and importantly, joy and positivity at persevering, having a growth mindset, and struggling through a challenge without giving up. Turn to the person next to you, give them a wink and a smile and a high five. Number 3, movement and music are magic. For this one, you get to copy the moves as I explain it. Ready? We need to help students learn by playing games, doing role plays, using their hands and bodies to explain and express what they are learning. Listen to music and have students learn through song. Awesome. Number 4, repetition modes. Have students repeat what they are learning via multiple different learning modes, like games, quizzes, role plays, discussion, teaching others, drawing, stories, song and dance. You now get to repeat this statement after me. Ready? Brain-based education can change the world. Go. Brain-based education can change the world. Awesome. And number 5, choice and purpose. Let students have choice in what they do. Let them follow their passions and interests. Make their learning relevant, meaningful to them and purposeful with real-world, big picture applications. You now get to choose which of these 5 tips is your favourite and hold that number up on your fingers. Brain-based strategies are already used every day by world-leading elite athletes, neuroscientists, entrepreneurs, and military special ops soldiers to perform at their peak and reach their potential. I'm sure you'll agree that young people, the future of our planet, and their teachers and parents deserve to know and use this information too, to perform at their peak and to realise and reach their incredible true potential. Remember, revolutionising education matters to all of us. When we use a brain-based, holistic approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning, we are at the forefront of the future in education, and brain-based education can change the future of this world. Thank you.